$7 a week.
Good afternoon. Thank you. Good afternoon. Welcome to the April 14th meeting of the Rotary Club of Des Moines. I'm President Catherine Staub, and I am delighted that you are here today with us at the Embassy Club. And now Bob Federal will share a moment of inspiration, followed by the Pledge of Allegiance and four-way text.
Thank you, President Catherine. I had the privilege to hear John Meacham last Wednesday at Bugsbaum lecture. I don't know if any of you were there. Yeah, it was awesome, and compliments to President Catherine, who introduced him and did an outstanding job. I want to share some of his thoughts with you. He said, the American future is up to us, that we should see each other as neighbors rather than adversaries. And he cited 4 areas for us to think about. To be curious, what are the forces shaping us? Compassion, wanting the country to be better, to want others to have what we have had. Candor, to be straight with one another. And empathy, to have empathy for others. And he cited, made reference to Franklin Roosevelt's 4th inaugural address. I just thought I'd share something with you from that. We Americans of today, together with our allies, are passing through a period of supreme test. It is a test of our courage, of our resolve, of our wisdom, of our essential democracy. If we meet that test successfully and honorably, we shall perform a service of historic importance, which men and women and children will honor throughout time. And now the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
The 4-way test.
Is it true? Is it fair to all concerned? Will it build goodwill and better friendships? Will it be beneficial to all concerned?
Now please greet your fellow Rotarians.
I just wasn't going to sit down if I was up there. All sorts of exciting. Well, I guess I'll make some volunteer opportunities as well. We were here last week.
Is Jeremiah Sherhart here today? Did he come? No? Well, it is his birthday today. I thought he had signed up. Anyway, if you see Jeremiah, please wish a happy birthday to Jeremiah Sherhart. We welcome 2 guests today. If our guests would stand as I introduce you. Susan is a guest of Matt Busick. Welcome, Susan. And Eric is a guest of Kevin Kassir. Welcome, Eric. Welcome to the April is a very busy month for us from a volunteer standpoint in particular, and so Jason Stuyvesant is going to share several opportunities with us. Jason is our Community Service Committee Chair. Jason.
Hey everybody. There's so much going on, I never take notes, and I had to take notes. So we have 3 different opportunities to give back. I guess only two of them would technically be considered a volunteer opportunity, but all 3 give back to the greater good. So the first one is our Earth Day Trash Bash. That's on April 20th, next week from 1 to 4 p.m. We're over at Ewing Park. The city will provide trash bags and gloves and things like that for us. We're going to be there from 1 to 4 p.m. We've done this several years. It was actually the first volunteer thing I ever did when I joined the club. Jim Slight was great at organizing it for us every year, and I'm really glad to have it back. So there should be sheets on the table if you'd like to register for that. And if you do come to the event, please remember your blue Rotary shirt. And if it's a cold day, you know, maybe wear it on top of something so everybody can see us out there in the community. So, next event is our Civitas program. That will be a discussion on human trafficking. We have a keynote speaker, we have a panel, we have several nonprofits that will be in the room discussing that. It's a multi-club event that I'm on the committee representing our club, but there's, I believe, 7 or 8 different clubs from around the metro that are all involved. That's on April 26th. It starts at 4 p.m. at the Hilton Garden Inn out in West Des Moines. There is a $20 charge for that. All of the proceeds go back to the charities that we work with on that, but at the end of the event there is some hors d'oeuvres and food and drink for networking with your fellow Rotarians across clubs too, so it should be a good time there. One thing I had noted is that since that program started, we've given over $20,000 to various charities on the topics each year, so we'd really like to see a good turnout for that. Make me look good, right, with the other clubs. And then the last one I have to discuss is our Dia del Nino event with our partnership with the Des Moines Library. That'll be on April 30th. The actual event is from 10 to noon, but we need volunteers from around 9:30 until 1 o'clock. If we could get somewhere between 10 or 15 for our club, that would really help them out. Should be fairly easy work for the day. They expect a ton of people. I know they had over 400 last year, and that was with COVID restrictions. So this year I expect a lot more than that ideally. We'll just be guiding people, maybe telling them where they can and can't park. There'll be some STEM tables set up, and we'll just kind of help keep those organized and things like that. Again, wear your Rotary shirt if you're coming to that one. Sign-ups for that one will be in the lobby. We had a printer error, so we don't have as many sheets on the table, but you can still sign up in the lobby. And one exciting thing on that I didn't stress enough last week is there is the opportunity to be Rosie Reader. You can wear the full mascot costume and greet all the children, and I'm sure get kicked a few times. And, but you know, you'll have a guide with you if you do choose to do that. That'll make sure your kind of area stays safe since you can't see through the mask all that well. And we can have more than one person do that also if you're interested. So I'm going to be busy making sure I organize everyone, so I'm not going to be able to be Rosie, but if anyone else would like to do so. So that was all I had. I'm going to be at all 3 events, so I'd love to see some familiar faces. Thank you.
Thank you, Jason, for your leadership with our community service. Any of you who wanted to be a mascot when you were in college and didn't get that role, this sounds like a perfect opportunity. I mean, Jason did not sell it like I think he should have sold it. Like, if this were a house, you would have sold the heck out of it. That is true, you don't. So he's forgotten now. Anyway, I hope that you have a great turnout for all of those events. Thank you. All right, and now Skeet Wooten is going to introduce our speaker.
I'm not used to a resounding applause like that. Thank you, Bob. Appreciate it. Good afternoon. It's my pleasure today to introduce Leisha DeSmet to the club for the presentation. Leisha has been an active member of the Greater Des Moines community for over 35 years, which hardly seems possible. Her leadership, advocacy, and project management skills have improved many of Greater Des Moines' cultural and mission-based institutions for the betterment of our community. Notable achievements include launching the Mercy Comfort Health Center for Women and leading the rebirth and renovation of the Hoyt Sherman Place, which, as you know, is a 1,200-seat historic theater and art gallery just right up the road. Leisha is currently the president and CEO of the YMCA of Greater Des Moines, and she assures me she will do the YMCA thing later, which is the YMCA of Des Moines is a $15 million association. Includes 5 membership ranches, a residential camp, a supportive housing campus that serves 140 residents. Since her tenure began in 2018, this is important, she has successfully eliminated $11 million in long-term organizational debt and navigated the volatile business environment created by COVID-19. She is a graduate of both the Greater Des Moines Leadership Institute, which is where we first met, and the Greater Des Moines Leadership Institute and Transformational Leadership Program, and has been recognized for her contributions for the GDMLI as a 2009 Distinguished Civic Leadership Award and the 2010 Des Moines Neighborhood Alice, Rodine, and Robert Mickle Recognition Award. In her spare time, she likes to cook, entertain, mow the lawn, and drink. She has 2 adult daughters who live on the East Coast. Please join me in welcoming Alicia.
Me and Skeet, class of 2000, Greater Des Moines Leadership Institute.
Best class ever.
Best class ever. It was an amazing opportunity. Well, thank you so much for inviting me today. I want to specifically thank Denise Esmond, who heard me speak about the YMCA at the Nexus Club meeting and thought that you all might be very interested in what's happening at the YMCA as well. So I'm thrilled to be here. So hello, and hello to those on our Zoom call today as well. The topic today is the road to recovery and sustainability. So I'm hoping I can answer all of your questions today about the current status of the Y, but I very much enjoy answering questions as well. So please don't hesitate. Just really quickly, I'm sure many of you are familiar with the YMCA. If I could just take a small survey, how many former members of the Y do we have in the room? Okay, great, awesome. How many current members of the YMCA? Oh my gosh, it's the YMCA, I know. It's the YMCA group today. Okay, so there's not much need for too much introduction, but proud history of the YMCA. In fact, it started with a gentleman named George Williams. He was the founder of the Young Men's Christian Association in London, England in 1844. And the YMCA of Greater Des Moines actually began, it was founded in 1868. So a little bit about this George Williams gentleman. In 1844, industrialized London was a place of great turmoil and despair. And for the young men who migrated to the city from rural areas to find jobs, London offered a bleak landscape of tenement housing and dangerous influences. So this 22-year-old gentleman named George Williams, he was a farmer turned department store worker. He was troubled by what he saw, and he joined with 11 friends to organize the first Young Men's Christian Association as a refuge for young men seeking escape from the hazards of life on the streets. The organization's drive to meet social need in the community was compelling, and its openness to members crossed the rigid lines separating English social classes. They asked men to pay a dues to participate and asked for extra dues so that those who couldn't pay would not be turned away. And so membership and philanthropy has been at the core of what we do at the YMCA since its very beginning. Years later, a retired Boston Sea captain working as a Marine missionary, he noticed a similar need to create a safe home away from home for sailors and merchants. And he was inspired by the stories of the Y in England, and so he led the formation of the YMCA in the United States, and that was born in Boston in 1851. The mission of the YMCA is to put Christian principles into practice through programs that build healthy spirit, mind, and body for all. And there's 3 foundational areas of programming that you'll find at the Y. They cover youth development, healthy living, and social responsibility. So that's an incredibly wide net of activities that the YMCA can provide. And what I particularly enjoy about that is that we're here to meet the needs of the community, and so we can be very nimble and very flexible in exactly how we do that. As Skeet mentioned, now we currently, so many of you knew of a YMCA that had more branches than what I'm standing here before you today overseeing, but now we have 5 fitness facilities. We have the amazingly beautiful YMCA supportive housing campus down on Southwest 9th Street. So we house 140 individuals who may otherwise be homeless in our community. The Y Camp, which many of you I'm sure attended. We have right now almost 10,000 membership units. We have 24,000 just about individual members, more than 3,000 donors, and 460 staff, of which 68 are full-time. Just to give you a little bit of perspective, pre-COVID, we had 1,200 employees at that time. So what has happened at the YMCA in the years previous to my tenure? So I began working at the Y in September of 2018. I took the position. And what we found was that the organization had just grown too much and very much too fast. So at the same time that I was hired, the board of directors was wise enough to bring in the national financial experts from YUSA to descend upon our community, took a look at the books, opened up all the financials, and so I was able to begin my tenure with a really a good detailed understanding and report of what was happening financially at the Y. And so a shout out to the directors of the board at that time for allowing me that opportunity to really start off on the right foot. What they noticed was that there were 6 major capital projects in the previous 10 years for me starting there. And that included the new Waukee YMCA in the suburbs, the supportive housing campus. There was the Healthy Living Center that the YMCA was engaged with Mercy as a partnership out in Clive. Beautiful facility. The Indianola YMCA was built. The Wellmark YMCA was transitioned then from Riverfront to where we currently are today, which, as many of you know, is the old Polk County Convention Complex. And then the YMCA built the downtown aquatics center. The result of all that growth in 10 years was a long-term debt load that was just unsustainable, increased operating costs, as you might imagine, and unrealistic growth projections. So something had to give. In 2018, we were forced to face the music, and what that financial assessment told me at that time was that debt exceeded all benchmarks and YMCA best practice levels. So what that chart shows you, just generally our debt service at that time was $1.9 million a year. So before the YMCA can start any mission work, $1.9 million came off the top to pay for debt service. And our debt at that time was almost $28 million in debt. And before the pandemic, we were a $19 million organization. We are now a $15 million organization. So at a $19 million organization level, our targeted debt service should have been no more than $1 million at the most, and we were faced with $1.9 million of long-term debt. We were, it says unlikely to meet annual covenants. Quite frankly, we've never met an annual covenant with our bank, and so that became a problem. 8 of our 12 operating units, and by operating unit I mean membership branches, supportive housing campus, Y Camp, 8 of those 12 operating units were projected to run deficits. So they were all operating in the red. There was significant deferred maintenance on all of the facilities, and for those of you who are lovers and great supporters of the Walnut Creek YMCA, Jason, there's some significant improvements that need to be done to that building. So lots and lots of deferred maintenance. Cash flow was incredibly tight, and incredibly tight is not even a good word for it. There was none. We were into a $750,000 line of credit every month, using that to the maximum. But the one thing that the report did point out was that the Wellmark YMCA was a strategic asset of the association. I took this graph directly from the report because it's pretty shocking, and there are times where early on you kind of didn't want to show it, but I'm here today with full transparency about what's happening. And so, you know, if you look at that second column, it says the zone of insolvency and then the arrow pointing to insolvency. We were basically insolvent at that period of time. We were in a cash flow crisis, net losses, unfunded depreciation, I mentioned deferred maintenance, that high amount of debt, not market viable. You know, there's so many new fitness facilities that have come into town and caused some tremendous competition. It's not the same as it was. You know, this association's been around for 153 years, which is amazing. But again, it has to change with the times. So bankruptcy or dissolution was certainly a possibility, but none of us, the board, West Bank, no one wanted to go down that path. So we really had to make some tough decisions. Some people would say, well, can't you grow your way out of that? So some board members would even say, Leisha, if you just got more memberships, this could be solved. Let me remind you, it was $28 million in debt. The whole community could join the Y, and I don't think we would be able to tackle that with more memberships. Could we cut our way out of it? That's what the association had done for many, many years, and when I came in, imagine the culture of an organization where you tell your branch operators that you have to cut, you have to do more with less and less. And so the culture had really gone downhill, and there wasn't a lot of enthusiasm, obviously, for that. So again, you can imagine what happens inside an organization with 1,100 employees. So there's no way we could cut our way out of it anymore, because honestly, if we did, I'd be hearing from all of you in this room about the cleanliness of the facilities or the hours of operation and things like that. So we had to find a third way. What in the world were we going to do? Well, our third way was that we needed to build a stronger, more sustainable organization, and we needed to leverage our assets to eliminate the debt. In other words, it was time to get out of the real estate business and refocus on the business of mission, which is youth development, health and wellness, and social responsibility. So what we had to do was we had to begin an organizational restructuring. We needed to secure the financial expertise that we needed. At the time I started with the YMCA, I didn't even have a CFO for a $19 million organization. We weren't monitoring our cash flow or the monthly forecasting. We implemented, so we started to implement the cash flow and monthly forecasting, which has obviously proven to be incredibly helpful. We did an association-wide mission cost analysis, so we took a look at every one of our programs that we operate. And when you run a not-for-profit organization, you're not there to make a profit exactly, but if there's no margin, there's no mission. So not every program can operate at a loss. And so you have to make hard decisions about which of those programs should you continue to do, which programs are most necessary in the community, and again, make some hard decisions. So that's what the mission cost analysis did for us. It allowed us to look not only financially at our programs, but also which were making the most mission impact. Of course, we needed to reduce operating cost, and so I had to close some underperforming branches. And those branches included Ankeny, which you may have read about in the paper, that YMCA was in a elementary school, or middle school, I should say, at the time. The association was being led by Jim Noyce at the time. Jim is he was an amazing board member, stepped in to serve as interim, and he got involved in working with Des Moines Area Community College. If you recall, there were some conversations about a YMCA being built along with a partnership with DMAC in Ankeny. But I think Jim saw the writing on the wall, and he also saw, remember what I mentioned earlier, the projections that were just unrealistic, and I think Jim realized that at the time. And so we did not pursue that deal with Des Moines Area Community College. So not pursuing that deal, needing to close the YMCA in the middle school, the atmosphere, the public relations surrounding that move in Ankeny was not conducive to starting another capital campaign to build a YMCA on our own. So that happened a couple years ago. We all love nothing more than to go to Ankeny with the YMCA at some time when we're ready to do that financially in the future. So that's the story of the Ankeny Y. And then I had to close the Boone YMCA. So not the Y Camp, which is also located in Boone, but the YMCA had an operation there that was in an old hospital building. And it was absolutely heartbreaking to close. I've learned it's heartbreaking to close any Y because of what it means to the community. That has been a rude awakening for me. These decisions are not taken lightly, especially when you serve a more senior population. It's the place they go, it's their health and wellness, it is their social outlet. And so, again, we don't take these decisions lightly. But this YMCA was located in this old hospital, And it was not handicap accessible in any way, and again, the deferred maintenance had gotten so large, that was over $1 million that was necessary. And I worked diligently with that community and with the city council to try to get funding to help support the YMCA, and that came with no success. And I'll just point out, interestingly enough, Boone just did a, not too long ago, maybe it was in March, bond referendum to actually build a recreation center there. You may have noticed in the paper, Fairway had pledged $2 million over time, which again is a challenge when you're trying to build something new, and you business people understand that. So it was $2 million over time, but then the community had to step up and say yes to this, and the community actually said no. And it was for a recreation center that was very much like a YMCA. It had some lap lanes in it, and it had all the amenities that you might find in a typical Y. And the community said no. And I think I tell that story because the Y needs to be where the community wants it. These are community-type facilities. They have to be supported by the community. And so while I was disappointed for the community of Boone, and particularly for the people who utilized the YMCA, I was not surprised by the lack of community support. So that's the story of the 2 branches that we closed. And then I knew immediately that I needed to launch a long-term debt task force. So how are we going to take on this vast amount of debt that we had? So I pulled together Scott Sanders, the city manager, my dear friend Abby Gilroy, who runs the Neighborhood Economic Development Corporation here in town. She's amazing at putting deals together. Tim Leach, who just retired from the partnership, a board member from Principal, and a real estate professional from Principal. So we all got around the room and we started to try to tackle how to put together a plan and like what in the world were we going to do. Okay, so then along came a pandemic. In the middle of all of this, our membership facilities were closed for 11 weeks. We reopened after that time, but under great restrictions. So you probably lived through that with us. The impacts of the pandemic were that we lost 40% of our membership at that time. Membership right now is returning, it's growing. Here's another projection story that I have to be careful about. We projected in this fiscal year's budget that we would grow at a rate of 12% over last year. So not pre-COVID numbers, but just last year. And we actually we're only growing at about 5.5%. So we misjudged the comeback. And so we are, of course, relooking at our budget and making sure we can do okay this year. But the reason I tell that is because yes, we're recovering, but we're still recovering. We lost $6 million in revenue. We had increased operating costs just because of all the COVID protocols. 97% of our staff were furloughed during that period of time, and there was obviously just real uncertainty about the future. But in the midst of crisis, you of course have to look for opportunity and never let a good crisis go to waste. So what we did was we took advantage, Catherine, this is for you, we took advantage of every federal recovery program that we could get our hands on. She had asked me that question at lunch, and I said absolutely. So the employee retention tax credits have saved us. Also, we took advantage of the disaster recovery loan. They first started at $150,000 at 2.75% interest. We've since been able to qualify for $500,000 on that. I asked for $2 million, but because of our financial situation, they would only grant $500,000, which we'll take. So that's been great. The payroll protection program. So as I mentioned, we had 1,200 employees, and in order to qualify for the payroll protection program, you had to be you had to be 500 or below when it first came out. So it was very uncertain times, and that things about that PPP program weren't really clear. And so we went ahead and applied for that, and we were awarded $1.9 million, which was wonderful, but it never left the bank, and I had to send it back. Because once they clarified the rules, you had to be 500 or less, both part-time and full-time. So our full-time employees were about 200, which would mean, yeah, you qualify. but we employ so many young people, so many part-time people, that brought our numbers up well over, we were 1,100, so could not qualify for that. I don't think the bank was very happy with me when I sent that money back, but nonetheless, it was the right thing to do. And we have since then reapplied for the PPP loan because our numbers dropped below 500, and were awarded those dollars. So just a roller coaster. And then the Iowa Fitness Center Relief Program, I'm really proud of. I hired a lobbyist for the very first time in my life, and I'll just give him a plug. His name is Andy Conlon. And Andy worked with me to help access some of the federal dollars that were coming down for COVID relief. And so we worked with the governor's office to put together a program that would affect every YMCA statewide, which has been great. So Governor Reynolds awarded over $8.8 million to YMCAs and other fitness centers throughout the state, of which the YMCA of Greater Des Moines was able to access $1 million from that. So, recovery programs. We engaged with our lender, which was West Bank, in formulating a workout plan. So as you can imagine, they tried to be as helpful as possible. So I have nothing but positive things to say about West Bank. They deferred some principal and interest on our loan during that period of COVID time. They bent over backwards, they did what they could, but they also were very firm in saying, Alicia, this can't continue and you have to come back with a workout plan on how we're going to get out of this. And so we began working on numerous different scenarios and plans, some of which they said no to and sent us back to the drawing board. We budgeted for a much smaller organization. We reduced our full-time workforce by 14%. I did move forward and lease the South Suburban YMCA that is now leased to an organization called Genesis Fitness. At this moment, we still own that facility, but I needed to lease that in order to get cash flow off of that building because it was one of those operations that was in the red. And so now I'm generating a few $100,000 of income off of that building every year. So again, it's heartbreaking and would love to go back to the south side in that location in some capacity, but that's what it takes for right now. And then Vicki Forsman, who is my Vice President of Mission Advancement, many of you probably know her. She's an amazingly wonderful person and is a member of Rotary, and we hope to get her back here with you. She was instrumental in helping us receive another $303,000 in philanthropic contributions. So if any of you donors are here, I want to thank you from the bottom of my heart for that extra support. And also for those of you who kept your memberships during that period of time. That was incredibly helpful as well to keep us afloat, so I want to thank you for that. Again, as I mentioned earlier, Wellmark is a strategic asset that we needed to take a look at selling. But what we did, in fact, was we engaged a commercial real estate professional, so Tyler Dingle is my broker from CBRE, to list our properties for sale or lease back. So the idea is I would not like to get out of the buildings entirely, but we'd sure like to stay and be able to lease space at a rate that we can afford to be in there. And that is incredibly tricky because we're a not-for-profit. And so I can't afford to pay property taxes on a building that we just lease. And so it takes some finessing, maybe a 1031 buyer, someone who's not interested in pecuniary profit off of the deal. So it's not just as easy as just putting it on the market and selling it and be able to pay market rent. We can't do that. And also, it's very important that we just don't exchange long-term debt for rent. That is not in the long-term sustainability of the YMCA. And that's what I'm here for, is to make sure that it remains. I want it, it's been here for 150 years. My goal is that it's here well into the future. So we put Wellmark, Waukee, Walnut Creek, and South Suburban Ranches up for sale. Indianola is actually owned by the city of Indianola. That one has not operated in the black since it opened, unfortunately. Worked really, really closely with their former city manager, who was wonderful to work with. We were paying $275,000 a year in rent in Indianola. Again, bad projections. When that facility was built, they thought it would draw from many rural surrounding communities. That has never come to fruition. And so it is an astonishingly beautiful YMCA. The pool is amazing. If you want to take your family for a swim, go down there because it's terrific. So working with the city, we did reduce that rent from $275,000 down to $70,000, which I'm incredibly grateful for. But we do not own that, we just operate that facility. And then the Grub, John R. Grubb YMCA in our urban core, that is also not owned by the YMCA. That building has been owned by the city for the last 28 years, and we are in a 28E agreement with the city to operate that facility. I won't spend too much time on Grub, but if any of you have more questions about what's happening there or what happened over time, I'm very happy to answer those questions for you. Worked with Five Fires Foundation on the sale of Y Camp. So Y Camp has an amazing support group of people who've been impacted positively by that Y Camp over the years. They got together and pooled funds, raised funds, and said, we would like to buy Y Camp so we have control over that property into the future. And so they came up with $2 million. We sold the Y Camp to Five Fires Foundation. But again, we work incredibly close with them. We do fundraising together with them, and they entered into a 10-year operating agreement with the YMCA. So it's a win-win situation, and they're doing an amazing job as a partnership for us. Not listed here, but we did also sell the Waukee YMCA to a group out of California called AVG Investors. And so they are a company that's used to leasing back to like Gold's Gyms, LA Fitness, those kind of places. So they're very familiar with that type of property. And they came in and bought the facility, and we entered into a 15-year lease with them on that. And they turned out to be just that kind of buyer that we needed to fit into our little box. So that's worked out really well. If you go there today, you'd never know the difference of who owns that facility. I conducted 3 visioning sessions with downtown shareholders on right sizing of the Wellmark Y. So I knew we had to do something there. That was a $42 million project to move from the riverfront to the Polk County Convention Complex. I'll repeat that number, $42 million. From what I've heard, and this is just anecdotal, I believe that it started as a $22 million project, but got out of scope. And the scope creep came, and someone decided that we needed 10 racquetball courts instead of 2, and then we have an Olympic-sized pool, and it just got bigger and bigger and bigger, and now it's at $42 million. The community was incredibly generous and spent $18 million of generosity to build that building, but when it's just that expensive, that gap, all became long-term debt. So that's what we were faced with. So I wanted to let those folks know what was going on, what was happening. So I was as transparent as possible, visited with the downtown community, and they said, okay, we get it, we know you're gonna have to do something, we would just really like to have a downtown Y. And so that's the mode with which I operate, is that we will continue to have a downtown YMCA. It currently is 146,000 square feet in that building. We really should have between 70 and 80,000 square feet for a really functioning downtown YMCA. And that does not include the pool. So you add the 50-meter Olympic-sized pool onto that. And then I had to really try to maximize the use of that aquatic facility. If I run that perfect every single day, perfectly, fill it up, try to make money on it, we will lose $350,000 a year. That is just the way it goes with pools. I've called in national pool consultants because, yeah, I've been around for 35 years, but I've never operated an aquatic center before. And so I know now what that mark is. And so we have to be okay with that, or we have to do something else. Most pools are built with partnerships between universities and or public entities. So you'll see that Waukee is going to build a 50-meter pool there that's funded by the school district. So that's the way this usually happens, but the YMCA did take on this facility. And then worked with consultants on financial scenarios. I hired a consultant firm out of Pittsburgh who had been working with other YMCAs in similar conditions around the country, and they were extremely helpful to us. So today we are a much stronger and more sustainable YMCA. Completed those sale leasebacks for the Y Camp and the Waukee properties. I am working with potential buyers on sale and leasebacks and right sizing of that Wellmark Y property. I've been through 3 different transactions that have not come to fruition. Hopefully Jason understands that in real estate, things fall apart as you get farther and farther down the line. So I'm kind of used to that now, but we'll continue to work on that. And when the Wellmark sale is complete, we will have taken the Y's long-term debt to approximately 20% of annual revenues, which is well within benchmarks for healthy and sustainable Y's throughout the country. So a little bit in conclusion, in 2022 was a whole new era for the YMCA. 2018, we had 10 straight years of negative operating margins. Today, we've been positive operating margins 2 of our last 3 years for our facilities. We were accessing a 6-figure line of credit to pay operating expenses. I mentioned that was $750,000. We have no line of credit today. And I'm happy to say that since this presentation was put together, I now have 90 days cash in hand to fund operating expenses. The long-term debt of $27 million has been reduced to $15 million, a 45% reduction, and we've got more to come. So strategically, where are we headed as an organization? We're focusing on our operational priorities. We're trying to get membership back to the YMCA's. We've invested in eGym, which Sue and I were just talking about the success of that that we're seeing in Waukee and at the Walnut Creek Y. We've enhanced our family memberships. We lost 5,000 membership units through COVID, and that's our highest paying membership category. And so we're working hard to get those folks back. And we are reclaiming our prominence in swim instruction and water safety in this community. We are now working with the Red Cross to do that. Refocusing on impact and our mission work. Certainly not leaving the fitness behind, but knowing where our priorities should be. And then board member engagement. I was able to recruit 7 new board members to the board of directors this last year, and every one of them is raring to go, understands the situation that we're in, and has just been absolutely terrific. So I've never seen a better board of directors in my career. Challenges remain. As I mentioned, we're still trying to recover from COVID-19. Got to complete that sale and lease back of the Wellmark Y. The need for physical improvements to our facilities. And then the future of the North Side, which will become a North Side Community Center, where the John R. Grubb YMCA is, and then how to serve the South Suburban communities. So that's where we are. So I want to thank you for listening to this story. Do I have time for questions? One question? Okay. That's okay. Please, I'll remain here a minute afterwards. So, yeah.
Many people in this room serve on nonprofit boards. What lessons did you glean from this experience? Was it the staff leading the board, is there any board not paying attention? How, without throwing anybody under the bus, how did we get here and what lessons did we learn?
Right, thank you. That's an excellent question, and it's my opinion that it was a combination of both of those things. And I would say, as board members, if you're on a board, do not be a passive board member. You must understand the financials, you must dig in, and you must ask challenging and important questions to be sure that you're headed in the right direction, and demand transparency from your executive leadership staff. Absolutely demand it and ask questions. So, and then also, maybe most importantly, is do not make decisions alone in an executive committee format. While I do rely on the executive committee to help me make decisions when the board is not in session, there are many, many special meetings that we've held with the full board over the last 3 years. So include everyone. That's your board. Decisions are not to be made by a small group of people on a large board. So, thank you, Catherine.
Thank you, Alicia, for your presentation today, for your leadership, and for everything that the Y does for our community of Greater Des Moines. We are donating a book in your honor through our Rotary Rosie Reader Band through the Des Moines Public Library Foundation. Last year, our Rotary Club of Des Moines Foundation donated $40,000 for the band through our community grant program. Upcoming meetings here at the Embassy Club. Please think about somebody you know who may be interested in hearing one of our speakers or who would just enjoy our delightful company and invite them to join us. Remember that you and your guests need to be registered by 9 a.m. on Wednesday. So some great, super popular programs coming up. April 21st, our local scholarship awards. This is where we award 6 $8,000 scholarships to Des Moines Public School seniors. And then on the 28th, we follow that with Educator of the Year Awards. We are going to honor 4 outstanding educators from the Des Moines Public School System. And then on May 5th, Lance Henning and Lisa Hauser with Habitat for Humanity will be here with us. So thank you for being with us today. Thank you for being part of Rotary Club of Des Moines. Thank you for our 2 guests for joining us today. We hope you decide to make this a regular thing on your schedule. For those of you who celebrate, we wish you a happy Easter or a happy Passover. We are adjourned.